Hi everyone, welcome to A Slice of Science. My name is Catherine from Mosey and I'm here with our guest today, Dr. Karena Nguyen. She recently received her Ph.D. in Integrative Biology at the University of South Florida. Thank you for being here today, Karena.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, let me get you some pizza.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Welcome,
Hello.
Karena. Thank you for coming today.
Of
to
course.
Talk about A Slice of Science with us.
Yes, thanks for providing the pizza.
Of course. Some good pizza.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to talk to you about your research a little bit.
Sure.
But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Absolutely.
So, when you were a kid, did you always want to be a scientist? Did you know that's what you're going to be?
So my dad has this poster that I made in second grade about me. And in that poster, there's a little box that says, when I grow up, I want to be, and there's a self-portrait of me as an astronaut floating through space. And so I kind of drew myself like this, floating through space.
Just exploring.
Exactly,
everything.
yeah. And so I think when I was growing up, I was really interested in space and I wanted to be an astronaut. I think a few years later, I slowly wanted to become a marine scientist because I thought dolphins were cool.
They are cool.
But growing up in Minnesota, I didn't really have a lot of chances to do marine stuff. And so I kind of started, I think, rethinking what I wanted to do, but I never really thought about being a scientist really until college, probably.
Until college. And was there like a eureka moment where you were like, I'm going to go into biology and I'm going to be a scientist now?
It kind of happened slowly.
Mm-hmm.
So my freshman year, I took General Biology 1 and General Biology 2. And that second semester is when you are introduced to ecology and evolution for the first time. And I had this hilarious professor who just made the topic really fun and interesting, and it sparked all these different questions for me. You know, how do species interact? Why do we care that species interact?
Right.
How does the way that humans are interacting with the environment, how does that influence species interactions? And so I started doing undergraduate research with him on plants, figured out that I really don't like plants at all.
Yeah.
So trial and error, right?
That's science.
So then I moved on to a different lab in the department and started working on turtles.
Oh.
And you say that, but they are sneaky.
Sneaky turtles.
And if you hold them too close, they can arch their necks and
What?
yeah.
No.
So found out that that wasn't for me either. But then I took a upper level ecology course with that same professor my junior year of college, and there was a section on disease ecology. And so he started introducing the idea of humans obviously have a very large impact on the environment. This includes, different organisms. Within those organisms is also disease. So as humans are interacting more and more with the natural environment, there's more opportunities for diseases in wildlife and of humans to jump that barrier and to cross over. And so this really kind of piqued my interest, and I started asking so many questions. And so he kind of pulled me aside at the end of class and he said, I think you should read this New York Times article, and just kind of slid it across his desk. And I still remember it to this day. I think it was back in 2009, almost a decade ago now. And it was the ecology of disease. And it was this whole prospectus piece in the New York Times that interviewed a lot of key disease ecologists and presented all of these case studies in how ecologists were finding these new diseases that had jumped from wildlife to humans because of the ways that we are kind of changing natural habitats and also having more contact with wildlife.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, and this kind of started on, I think because I became so curious, I almost became obsessed.
Yeah.
And that obsession turned into a, should I do this for a living? And so when I finally asked this professor, he said, I've been waiting for you to ask me this for 3+ years.
Oh my goodness.
And so
He knew the whole time.
He knew the whole time, but he wanted me to come to that conclusion on my own.
You just had to get bit by some turtles first.
Exactly. And then after that, I started my senior year. I applied to graduate school and was accepted at USF, and that's how I came to Tampa.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm tracking your whole story as you're going through college here. Were you interested in these, like what subjects were you interested in elementary school? The same kind of things? Like were you?
So not really, and I think that's what's funny and what I want to kind of stress about, I don't think scientists are born wanting to be scientists. I really was just curious about the world.
Right.
I really enjoyed reading, and so my dad would take me to the library almost every single week in the summer. I would get my new stash of books for the week, and this included a lot of fantasy and fiction. I wasn't really interested in the sciences per se, but I was really just a voracious reader, and I enjoyed reading in school and also history. And so all of these different things, I think, just kind of feed into science broadly. It's not strictly math and science.
Right.
I read a lot of papers to do research, and that's part of it too. And so I think each person starts out at a different path, and you can end up at science in the end.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had some really good role models along the way, like your dad taking you to like feed that curiosity, and your professor kind of helping you like find your own way as well. Those sound like some really great role models. Did you have any other role models as well?
I think really most scientists that I know have that professor who saw something, in class and nurtured that curiosity, and also gave me the confidence that I could become a scientist. Because I think we often have this stereotype that scientists have to be brilliant, but really science is all about perseverance. Experiments fail all the time, really all the time.
And how do you handle that when you experience these failures? Because you said it's a part of science.
It is. It was definitely really hard at first, and it's still hard because you go into an experiment hoping that your hypotheses will be supported, that there will be, good results that can be analyzed. But I think I take failure as just a learning moment. You didn't design something correctly, or maybe some chance thing ruined the experiment, and that's just all part of science. It's about you're trying to capture, natural occurrences.
Right.
And so along with that comes the failure, and you have to believe that in the future you'll be successful.
Can you think of any particular failures that you encountered in any of your experiments, or funny mishaps maybe?
Oh gosh. Well, I particularly remember early on there was one experiment where I was extracting eggs so that I could infect my snails.
Ah, the disease eggs. Oh no.
Yes.
Parasite eggs.
The parasite eggs. And there's a couple different sieves that you have to put the homogenous, that you kind of filter out larger tissue.
Bigger to smaller.
Bigger to smaller. Right. And so it costs thousands of dollars to house the organisms. And then
The snails?
well,
Or
not the
the
snails.
the parasite.
The parasite.
You don't want those getting out.
Exactly. And so it's a really expensive process. You don't want to waste the eggs. And I switched the sieves. And so I ended up washing away all of my eggs.
Oh
down the drain, and I just remember staring at the drain as I realized that all of my eggs were just
Would have been like trying to catch them. And then I
Or
would have
going
gotten
away.
sick, and that's why.
Well, luckily, because they hadn't infected the snail yet, they're not bad for us. At
So
that
only
stage.
when they're in the snail at
Yes.
that stage.
Mhm.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So we've had some pizza.
Yes.
And now I've asked you a lot of questions, tough questions, and now I'm gonna ask you some fun questions.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready? We're gonna do kind of a speed round. Is cereal soup? Why or why not?
I think this is a contentious topic,
Yes.
but I will say
Because soup can be cold. There's like gazpacho.
this is true. That's what I'm thinking about right now. I would say cereal is a soup,
You eat it with a spoon.
a breakfast soup,
A
perhaps.
breakfast soup.
A breakfast soup.
Maybe you should that's how you can phrase it. When
Yeah.
you're hungry for breakfast. What would you like this morning? I think I would like a lovely breakfast soup.
Yes.
Okay.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Yes. That was a good one. And the French toast crunch? Does pineapple belong on pizza? Why or why not?
Yes.
Yes. Go on.
I used to dislike pineapple on pizza as a kid, but I really do like the pineapple for the sweet addition to kind of the savory cheese and ham
So,
that usually goes on.
so your argument is it's a refined taste.
It is a refined taste, indeed. Yeah.
All right. If you were a superhero, what would your scientist or superhero name be?
So So when I taught scouts here at Mosey, they dubbed me the Worm Lady.
The Worm Lady.
Because I talked about parasites often when we were discussing environmental science or sustainability. And so I became the Worm Lady, and I think I'd be okay with that.
And the parasites are kind of wormy.
Yeah, they're kind of worm-like, you know.
Would you have like a cool worm costume to go with it maybe?
I think so. Or I would be okay with also being a snail.
Ah.
I think some sort of play on snails.
Like a suit, like you wouldn't turn into a snail. That'd just be like
Right, like I can have a suit.
Batman, but like snow.
Yeah,
Snow.
like maybe a snail
Captain Snail.
backpack or
Snail
something
backpack.
with all of my research tools in there.
Ooh. Like what kind of research tools would be in there?
Definitely a microscope, some vials that I could collect samples with,
You probably need some thermometers. I'm
some
guessing.
thermometers, and some other things,
Okay.
just like that.
Just like a endless trove of science tools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If your 5-year-old self suddenly inhabited your body, had access to your lab, could just go crazy, what kind of experiment do you think that they would want to do?
So as a kid, I read a lot of fantasy books, and I always really wanted to build a portal into a science realm. And I think that would be really cool. Some sort of fantasy realm and building that sort of entrance into another world. I think that would be really fun.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Before we're out of time, I have one last question I wanted to ask you for the audience.
Okay, I'm ready.
What advice would you give to someone who's looking to go into science and kind of become where you are today?
I think my advice applies to everyone, actually. I think growing up as a kid, although I wanted to be an astronaut and a marine scientist, I didn't really understand what a scientist is or what a scientist does. And I think it really boils down to just being curious and being creative about how we think about how the world works. And so whether that's I really enjoy math or I enjoy chemistry or biology, or I really like doing art or writing poetry or short stories. I think that all has a place in science, whether you're maybe helping a scientist write a piece for the general public or creating visualizations of science for a scientist. I think everyone can have a role to play in really just showing how great the world is and how the environment is just amazing, and how we all have a role to play in this whole ecosystem.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that advice with us, Karena, and thank you for answering all of our other questions.
of course, happy to.
All right, well, that's all from us.
All right, stay curious.
And keep discovering.
Bye.